Which investor type Pokemon are you? Not sure? Don't worry. In this video, I'll break down the 3 main investor types: Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander, and explain why you might be choosing the wrong one for your financial journey. By the end, you'll know which one fits you best and what might be best for your long-term financial journey. Let's get right into it and meet our first investor type, the Bulbasaur. The Bulbasaur Investor is super chill, sometimes a little bit too chill when it comes to talking about money. This is the person who doesn't really do anything with their finances. Money talk might bore them or scare them. Investing, budgeting, it's not really for them. They're the kind of person that'll say, it's all going to work out at the end of the month anyway. Or they'll say something like, my cousin invested once and he lost all of his money. This is the kind of person to amble through life without ever really thinking too much about money. They may have some savings on the side, or they might have a pension plan through their employer, but they don't take an active role in managing their money at all. So how does this person profile? Well, this is the kind of person that never checks their bank statements. And the furthest they'll go is having their money in a low interest savings account at maybe 0.3% interest. They may have some savings, but they aren't really actively planning anything. This is the kind of person who's most likely to live paycheck to paycheck. As long as they can afford what they currently want, or can afford it with their next paycheck, they're not really bothered. Not always, but usually these are also the kind of people to take out high interest credit cards or really bad car loans. Now this person comes in many types. There's the kind that spends it all on payday, or the kind who just religiously saves every single pound they make or every single dollar they make, but doesn't really think about investing in any way. Well, let's talk about, does this style really work at all? And unfortunately the answer is no. Bulbasaur types rarely win money. Why? Because doing nothing is rarely the right strategy. But actually this type makes up about half of the developed world. I mean, almost half of all people don't have a budget or a financial plan in place. I mean, 47% of people can't even afford a single emergency, something that might cost you just up to $1,000. That would be requiring them to take out a loan. That can be things from like a car repair bill, or the boiler breaking at home, or they've had a medical emergency while they're abroad. I guess they have the one benefit that in the short term, they don't have to make any hard decisions when it comes to money. They don't have to budget. They can generally buy what they want. But this is a very short-term view on things. They're never really able to acquire any high net worth assets. And if they do, it's not because they've used their money properly. It's because the only thing they know how to do is just put money in the bank and forget about it. Unless they truly don't care about money at all, this strategy is probably not the one to go for. Alright, on to the next one. Let's talk about the Squirtle type investor. The Squirtle investor is smart and steady. This person knows they're not the Wolf of Wall Street, so they just keep it fairly simple. They follow classic personal finance advice: budget, have an index fund, have an emergency fund, put some money in a high interest savings account. They avoid bad debt and just try and live within their means. They have a plan, even if it's basic, and they generally try and stick to it, whether that's a budget or an investment plan. They tend to automate aspects of their investing, but that's really it. They don't have any flashy moves. They kind of just stick to the basics well. So how does the Squirtle investor profile? Well, they budget. Like I said, they save a portion of every single one of their paychecks. They invest in things like index funds or low-risk assets that provide a return for them. They always max out their retirement accounts wherever possible in tax-efficient ways. They try their hardest not to time the market, and they just buy automatically. And this kind of person rarely panics when the market moves up or down. So what does the evidence say about Squirtle investing? Well, for the average person, the Squirtle investing method is the best. That's because it tends to win the most. And the way it does that is because it doesn't try to win big overnight. It wins slowly and steadily over time. I mean, here's the thing. The market rewards patience. Everyone to some degree knows that, just investing in the stock market will return about 10% average per year. Now, 10% a year doesn't sound like a lot, but because of compound interest, that means your money doubles basically every 7 years. Now, of course, that's an average and not every year is going to do that, but these people have long-term investing goals. They don't really care what happens in the market year to year. And the truth is, most individual investors can't beat an index fund or the whole stock market overall. I mean, most people have by now heard of that famous example many years ago where Warren Buffett went to a bunch of hedge fund managers and said, hey, I'll give you $1 million if you can, over a period of time, if you can beat the S&P 500. And out of all the hedge fund managers who took up the bet, not one of them beat the market over that time period. Now, the best thing about following an approach like this is that you can actually just automate the process so that there's no active steps for you to mess up. You just set up an active investment, let's say $500 per month, that comes out of your account as soon as you get paid. You don't have to do anything, and you can basically turn your brain off. So what kind of outcomes do Squirtle investors have? Well, over time, they're the most likely to obtain wealth without much stress. They're rarely, if ever, going to become billionaires unless they were starting from a very high place, but most of them are going to end up being millionaires at some point in their life. That's thanks to decades and decades of compound growth. But importantly, they do this without requiring to understand the markets too well, without having a high financial understanding or IQ, and with actually less stress overall. Finally, let's talk about the fireman, Charmander, also known as the risk taker. This is the high risk, high reward chaser. Charmanders have big dreams of getting rich fast, and nothing is going to stop them, or so they think. They're the ones who invest in your crypto memes, your NFTs. They've tried Amazon FBA, they've tried Forex, they've tried stock picking, they've tried drop shipping. They've really done it all. And they've probably bought one too many courses online about how to become a millionaire. This is the kind of person that says nobody ever got rich by being lazy, so grind hard and sleep later. I'm not gonna lie, I used to be this guy, and I think most males in their, early 20s used to be this guy. We feel this kind of personal responsibility, especially with social media, that like we really need to succeed and we need to do it fast and we need to be better than everyone. Usually we'll try something for a few months, it won't work, we'll burn out, we'll switch to the next thing, that also won't work out. And the main reason is that like we actually just don't have the skills, dedication, or patience to make those kind of things work. I mean, I remember this one time I went to one of these like free real estate courses. It's a 2-day course, and I actually skipped a holiday with my friends to go there. And when I got to the course, I kind of realized pretty quickly that we weren't really being taught much, and that actually they were just using the experience to sell us more expensive courses. Like they weren't selling us a product, we were the product for them. They just saw cash signs in their eyes. Anyhow, let's talk about how Charmander's profile. Now these people tend to be energized and motivated. They often consume huge amounts of entrepreneurial content online, like your Gary V's, your Alex Hermosi's. They're the kind of person to have a hustle poster in their bedroom. When you ask them what exactly their plans are, they're a bit generic, but they all seem to associate with money and hustling and grinding. Like I said before, this is almost a rite of passage for most people, especially most young men, and actually most Squirtles started off here. I know I did. The good thing is Charmanders have high levels of self-belief, and that can really benefit them. The problem is they usually have very, very low focus. With many of these strategies, it takes, these methods, it takes a really long time to see success. You need to really persevere with it. But the problem that they have is that they need results now. So after a few months of one thing not working out, they're on to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And because they don't really give anything enough time to work out, it doesn't. For all the hustle and hype and everyone who has made it online using this, using these kind of thought processes and grind personality, it's pretty tough. There are wins, but they are few. And the thing is, we hear all about them, so we think that everyone is winning, due to social media. But in truth, we don't hear about all the losses, because who's gonna go scream about it online? Most people burn out, lose money, learn some tough lessons, and then end up becoming a Squirtle anyway. It's a classic example of something we call survivorship bias, where we only see the ones that we think are winning and we don't see the ones we think are losing. So we think, oh, everyone that does this must really be a success. And it doesn't help that the gurus who are selling us courses online make it seem so easy and so foolproof and anyone can do it, and look at all my success stories and all my, we've all seen those kind of videos online. You probably got showed a video like this as an advert at some point today. Let's talk about some of the stats quickly. 97% of day traders lose money. At those odds, you're probably better off just going to the casino and putting it all on red, if we're being honest. When it comes to starting a business, roughly half of all businesses fail in the first 5 years, and that's 2/3 by the time it gets to 10 years. And now for some anecdotal evidence, a lot of my friends who have been down this path have really burnt out, and it's really affected their mental health over the long run. They might hustle hard for a few months, but then they eventually burn out. And to be honest with you, most of them regret the process, having spent a lot of money unnecessarily. Let's talk about Charmander outcomes. Now, to be fair, not all Charmanders are doomed. That's not the message I'm trying to send. There are those who succeed, and they do tend to succeed in a big way. Unlike the Squirtle, who's going to have a slow rise over time, when Charmanders win, they win massive. The thing is, the kind of people who win usually have some level of experience in the industry that they're talking about over a long period of time, and the motivation to match. Not everybody is built like that to be able to put in 80-hour work weeks, week after week after week. But even with that, it may take several years to really make it to where you want to, and you have to persevere through all of that. But that being said, a Charmander with some skill, high levels of resilience, and really hard work ethic will probably make it at some point in their life. I think the biggest problem is that most Charmanders start off with absolutely no capital, so it's a steep learning curve, because you not only have no capital, you need to make it quick because you need money to survive and thrive. But you do learn some things along the way. You know, I've obviously been through that phase myself, and I can say it was a valuable learning experience for me. I've had 3 or 4 businesses. I've had so many different ventures. Now that we've talked about the 3 different Pokemon investor types, which one should you be? Well, the first question you've got to ask yourself is, what matches your personality, your goals, your motivation, and your energy? The answer isn't a one size fits all. When I talked about Bulbasaur, if you saw yourself in that, I'm sorry, here's some tough love, but things do not look good for you. Bulbasaurs rarely win when it comes to money, but I guess if you really don't care about money at all, or you're sitting on a fat trust fund, this one can be alright. The good news is it's the easiest one to fix. Going from a Bulbasaur to a Squirtle doesn't take that much time at all. You just have to start caring a little. You can read a book or 2, watch 4 or 5 YouTube videos, make a simple plan, automate your investing, hit subscribe, and pretty soon you're going to be a Squirtle. My message to people would be, don't be a Bulbasaur by default or because you're lazy, because the return you'll get from just moving from Bulbasaur to Squirtle is so significant and it just doesn't take that much work. Now let's talk about Squirtle. This is the sweet spot for most people. If you identified yourself as a Squirtle when I was talking, congrats, you're choosing a path that's historically been proven. You don't need extreme intellect or extreme work ethic, you just need consistency and patience. If you want to build wealth while having a relatively balanced life, Squirtle is the choice for you. In my mind, it's the best balance of effort and reward because you're putting in relatively small amounts of effort and over the long run, you're getting a really substantial reward. I'd say it's probably right for 80 to 90% of people I meet on a day-to-day basis. Alright, let's talk about Charmander. So maybe you heard Charmander when I was talking about it before and you thought, hey, that applies to me. The Charmander route can work brilliantly for some people. Here are the questions I'd ask yourself if you think that you're a Charmander. Do I have a really high risk tolerance? Am I willing to lose it all? Do I genuinely have a plan to acquire, or do I already have the skills required in the industry I'm thinking of? Am I willing to put in insane hours, ruin my work-life balance for the small chance that I will succeed? And do I handle failure well? Because if you're going to be a Charmander for the rest of your life, you're going to fail a lot, and that's okay. If nothing I said there scared you, guess what? You might actually be a natural Charmander. And if that's truly you, more power to you. Just go in with open eyes and know what to expect. Maybe temper your fire with a bit of Squirtle wisdom on the side, so put a little bit away and just, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And also remember that it's never too late to change. If on the other hand, hearing what I said about Charmander made you kind of second guess yourself, hear me out. That's completely okay. You can live your life as a Squirtle with relatively little drama. You can also do a mix, which is what I currently do, where I have spent most of my time investing like a Squirtle and managing my money like a Squirtle, but I'm doing things like this. So you can have money on the side that you choose to do more risky ventures with. And I'd always advise choosing a venture that fits your skill set or your interest. That way, you'll do it even when there's no money coming in. And also, that way you aren't putting all your eggs in one basket. And naturally, as you get a little bit older, your responsibilities change, so you need to be a bit safer with the way you play things. But the truth is, all of these Pokemon types and everything I've talked about today, it's a spectrum. You might be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You could be Bulbasaur and Charmander at the same time. It's much more difficult to put yourself in a box, and that's fine. The whole purpose here is just to make you actively think about what you're doing when it comes to your money. Ultimately, the decisions come down to self-awareness and just knowing what options are out there, and also just being brutally honest with yourself and saying, is the way I manage my money and my finances smart for me? Now, choose wisely and let me know down in the comments what kind of investment Pokemon you are. Maybe it's one I haven't even mentioned. And while you're down there, drop me a like and maybe a subscribe too. Peace, goodbye.